Hello everyone, it's Captain Sensible here. So Mr. Smelly's sent me his new fragrance, Gravitas Pour Homme, which apparently you can find on Kickstarter if you search for it. Now, he's asked me to do a quick review of it, so I'll try. The notes in this one are bergamot, ambergris, lavender and bed springs, and the perfumer is John Motson. Now, I quite liked it. It lasted very well, and it was quite a rich and masculine fragrance. I haven't been able to try it out on my wife though, unfortunately, because I've been away with work, you see. I've been abroad. And well, actually, I was on the continent, and I got a bit lonely out there. I missed my wife, to be honest. And I've got to admit that I went to a brothel, and I walked into this brothel one night, and I put €500 on the table, and I said, I would like your most ugly woman, please, and I'll also have beans on toast for dinner. And the lady said, well, for €500, you could have one of our best-looking women and a really nice meal. Why do you want that? I said, well, I'm not horny, I'm just homesick.
Hello everyone, welcome back to all of you in the Smelly Army. So in today's video we're going to be looking at my favourite 2 fragrances from each of the last 7 decades. So it's going to be a really interesting one. I'm going to try and get through them fairly rapidly, and I really want to know in the comments what your opinions are on the ones that I've picked. This video is sponsored by my friends over at Notino UK. There is a link in the description for every fragrance that's in this video, and you can buy all of them there because they have all of the main big releases really of the last 7 decades on their website actually. Also, they have a tremendous range of other stuff, often at very, very good discounted prices. I've been shopping there for ages, so I'm very happy to do a monthly sponsored video for them. So go and check them out. If you're not in the UK, you may have a Notino where you are, or if not, I think you will still find these fragrances of interest. I think I might carry on and do a little bit of a bonus video over in my Patreon group, the Smelly Army Private Members Club. Again, there will be a link in the description if you'd like to join that. We get an extra video every week for $2 a month, and I'll do a few sort of honourable mentions outside of this list. But let's get stuck into the list proper. I did something similar actually on the Patreon group a while back where I just did 1 in each decade, but I've changed some of my picks, so we've got 2 for each decade. So it's going to be 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. Let's get stuck into it. Without further ado, I'm going to mix it up because I thought it just might be a bit boring to go to do chronological order. So I'm going to do them in a kind of a random order. I hope that you agree that that might be fun. So I'm going to dive in, and I'm going to start with the 2000s actually. So the decade from 2000 to 2009, the new millennium had begun, and I've got 2 picks for you. I have included a couple of niche choices in this list from the more recent years. So the 2000s, one fragrance that I thought had to go in as an absolutely groundbreaking and remarkable release when it first came out in 2005 is of course Dior Homme. Dior Homme from the perfumer Olivier Polge was a really groundbreaking smell when it first hit the shelves. It was reformulated in 2011 because Mr. Polge moved on, and I think they went to doing in-house perfumery over there. I think it was Francois Demichy did a reform, but it's pretty similar to the original version, the reformulated one that you get now in your shops. A superb fragrance which harnesses this kind of waxy, lipstick-esque iris note, a makeup bag type of smell in a men's fragrance. That doesn't sound like it might necessarily be a good thing, but it absolutely works. It's absolutely beautiful. There's a certain sort of floral freshness in there, a little bit of woodiness, a little bit of cacao, a hint of sweetness, a hint of chocolate. Some people get a note of pear, and this beautiful waxy iris. It ushered in a new era of fragrances that were built around this type of accord. There are flankers to it that are really great, but in this video I'm going with solely pillar releases, original releases, not their flankers, but the intents and the parfum of this are also wonderful. For my other choice, 2 in each decade, remember, in the 2000s, I've gone for a niche one, and it's a real heavy hitter. It's one of the few that I don't actually have a bottle of in this list. It's Tom Ford's Tuscan Leather, which looks like that. This, although it's actually not a fragrance I've ever quite loved enough to get myself a bottle, it is a superbly unique and recognizable scent that harnesses this leather note. I think the accord or the ingredient is called suederol, a very rich and kind of masculine, sexy leather note, mixed in with a little bit of sweetness. There's raspberry in there, there's saffron. It's very, very potent, powerful stuff. Some people say it smells like cocaine. I honestly wouldn't know, but it is a remarkable and unique scent, and it was one of the real flagship, groundbreaking ones from the Tom Ford private blends. I think it was 2007 that they originally came out, and this one may be the most outstanding of the bunch in terms of the uniqueness of Tom Ford's Tuscan leather. You can, on Notino UK, also get YUQAWAM by RASASI, which is a fantastic clone of this if you want something a little bit more affordable. So that was the 2000s. We'll move around in random order now. So let's go right back to the earliest decade that I'm going to feature, and that's the 1950s. So I've got two beauties for you. So in 1955, Chanel released Pour Monsieur. It was the first men's release from the house of Chanel in terms of fragrances by perfumer Henri Robert. It is a brilliant classic chypre scent, very nice bergamot and lemon classic type of opening, lovely herbaceous notes. I think there's a bit of ginger, there's a little bit of a spiciness in there, and a really, really elegant, gentlemanly feel. Performance on it is not particularly amazing, but that makes it a very great, refined, understated scent. And the actual smell of this one is still one of my favourites of all time. Chanel Pour Monsieur, an absolutely classic, gentlemanly, fresh citrus stroke chypre. That means it's got a little bit of oak moss bitterness in there as well, and an absolutely stunning composition. Even when you buy today's version that's still on the shelves, it's lasted that many years for a good reason. My other pick from that decade, the 1950s, is Monsieur de Givenchy. This was released, I think, in 1959. You can still get it in a bottle like this. The bottle's changed a lot over the years. Similarly, I think it's classed as a chypre fragrance. I would say maybe leaning a little bit more towards citrus aromatic more so than chypre. Very, very nice green bergamot opening again. Quite woody as well underneath that, and a kind of dry bitterness about this one. Very similar mood that you'd be in when you reach for this one or the Chanel Pour Monsieur, but they have little distinctive features, and there's something absolutely characterful and beautiful. I probably ever so slightly prefer Monsieur de Givenchy when I'm in that mood, but they're quite similar actually, those two in style. So moving on, not long, which decade shall we pick next? Like I say, I'm doing it very randomly. I'm going to dive into the 1980s. Let's fast forward in time a bit. So two superb fragrances from the 1980s that still stand up as if not worth wearing and loving. You've got to try these if you can, and I think if you're into fragrances, I think both of these belong in a masculine fragrance collection. So no surprises perhaps with the first one. It's Kouros from Yves Saint Laurent, the 1981 release, total powerhouse fragrance. Very, very many notes, a huge long note listing. There's sweetness in there, there's honey, there's freshness, there's a kind of soapiness, there's quite an animalic undertone to this one with civet and musk, which gives it this sort of clean and dirty at the same time. If you want to know the essence of what does an 80s powerhouse smell like, Kouros from Yves Saint Laurent is it, and still the version that we get today is very much in that vein. So go and check it out. I think Kouros is, if you really are into fragrances, you should have a bottle, even if you don't wear it as often as some of the more crowd-pleasing modern fragrances out there. The other one then, from the other end of the decade, it had to be in the list, didn't it? And that's Fahrenheit from Dior. The 1988, I think, release from Dior was completely unlike anything else out there when it was first released. A kind of petroleum accord is the defining feature of this. There's violet leaf in there, there's hawthorn, there's a little bit of mandarin kind of freshness as well in the opening, but it's fiery, it's masculine, it's leathery, it's kind of a mixture of leather and petrol and something completely magical. And Fahrenheit, absolutely superb and still very, very good in today's formula that's on the shelves. You've got to consider actually Fahrenheit. You don't smell it, I don't think, that much on people. So whereas perhaps a lot of people wore it in the 90s, I think now you might be a bit unique if you wore that one. So those are my two picks for the 1990s. Let's skip about then. What shall we go for next? I'm going to dive in for the 1960s next. So two crackers from the 60s. First of all, I think it was 1965 when Guerlain released Habit Rouge. Still a stunning fragrance. This one ridiculously good value, by the way, on Notino. I think it's 30 something pounds for maybe for the 100ml. I can't remember the exact price, but it is really good value, and that's where I got mine. It's a superb combination of citrus with what we call an oriental style fragrance, which means there's a bit more sweetness. There's vanilla in this one, a lot of lovely woods, a beautiful rose note combined with citrus. So there is a citrus freshness, but there's a sort of bitterness about it and a floral element, quite unique and very different to the Chanel Pour Monsieur, the two sort of other ones from the decade before. Takes things in a different direction away from that classic simple cologne with this more oriental sweetness and the rose in there. Superb stuff, Habit Rouge, and really, you know, under the radar in a way, because not many younger people know about or wear that one, but it's well worth checking out, guys. Okay, so that was Habit Rouge. I'm doing the 60s here, aren't I? So I'm afraid the next one is perhaps predictable because it's got to be in the list. It's Dior's Eau Sauvage from 1966. Edmund Runitska created a fantastic citrus aromatic fragrance when he created this one. Superb bergamot and citrus freshness in the opening. A lovely hedione note or accord, which is a note apparently that actually has been chemically proven to have an effect on women's brains and produce attraction. It's sort of related a little bit to the smell of jasmine. There's rosemary in here, there's a herbaceous element to it as well, and lovely vetiver in the base. Superb kind of fresh, lemony, masculine fragrance with depth and a certain indefinable sexiness. Eau Sauvage, for me, I prefer it to Dior Sauvage, the kind of modern flagship fragrance for men from Dior. That was the flagship of the 60s, maybe the 70s and 80s too in terms of sales. Okay, so that was the 1960s. Let's leap forward again. So we're going to go into the decade that we're in now. The 2010s coming to an end very soon. Will Mr. Smelly's Gravitas Pour Homme be the fragrance of the 2020s? Hopefully. So I'm going to be touching on the world of niche fragrances again, because in 2010 Creed gave us Aventus. I'll keep it brief because most of you already know all about this one. It is a superb fragrance. It's talked about a bit too much and overdone, but it's great stuff. Bergamot, pineapple, there's birchwood, patchouli, vanilla, blackcurrant. Very, very clever and sophisticated stuff. A mix of superb, effervescent, sparkling citrus freshness with a certain woodiness and an almost smoky undertone. People talk about different formulations, etc., etc. I've just got an old style 30ml bottle, but that you can't get anymore. But you have to admit, this one is a groundbreaking and hugely important and well-loved fragrance from the niche house of Creed, who've become very, very well known and mainstream now. And here's another house that you could say similar things about, because I've gone for another niche pick for the 2010s, because of course niche fragrances have become much more commonplace and there's so many more. It's no longer unusual or niche in a way to like a niche brand's fragrances. It's very commonplace now. And Acqua di Parma's Colonia Essenza, I think it was 2011 or maybe 2010 when this came out. Superb citrus aromatic, my favourite from Acqua di Parma. Takes the original Colonia from 1916 and gives you something fresh and clean and presentable in that vein, but different. It's got real depth, a beautiful melange of citrus notes. I think it's tangerine, grapefruit, neroli is in there. If you want something like Tom Ford's Neroli Portofino on steroids, I think it kind of delivers that. It's soapy, there are floral notes, there's a bit of amber in the base, there's even some patchouli, so it lasts really well, it performs really well. All of the fragrances, by the way, in this list have performance that I would put in the decent category. I haven't sort of specified about all of them. I should have mentioned maybe the 50s ones, Monsieur de Givenchy and Chanel Pour Monsieur, a little bit more subtle. All of the others I would class in the decent category. This one, unlike many of the others, I would say is very, very good, considering that it's just a citrus freshie. But it's a beautiful citrus freshie, absolute Italian elegance and chic in a bottle. Colonia Essenza, one of my two big favourites from the decade that we're in now that's coming to an end soon. Now I'm going to jump back in time a little bit. We'll go for the 1970s. Two picks from that decade. 1974 saw the release of Givenchy Gentleman, and really a powerhouse of the 70s. Main accord in this one that really stands out is the patchouli. There's honey, There's a sort of honeyed lemon element, a sort of bergamot freshness in the opening. There's leather, and there's also a slightly animalic civet note. So it's very heavy. You'll really smell the patchouli if you know what the individual note of patchouli smells like. I've got an older bottle. The modern formula I still think is very, very good. And it's very pungent. It's very masculine, woody, leathery, a little bit animalic. And it's a real patchouli bomb as well. So real hairy chested kind of stuff. My dad used to wear this in the 80s and 90s. And to me, it's one of the first aftershaves I ever smelled. So Givenchy Gentleman was a true classic of the decade, the 70s. The other one that has to probably go in the list is Azzaro Pour Homme, 1978 release, generally described as a barbershop fragrance. By the way, Givenchy Gentleman, kind of powerful in performance, so watch out. Same goes for this one, a soapy barbershop type scent with a twist of anise in there, a licorice-esque accord, a lot of tonka bean and lavender, quite pungent, sort of soapy and clean, with an almost just slightly dirty kind of undertone or something a little bit gnarly in there, and this rather interesting anise or star anise accord. And I think Rive Gauche Pour Homme by Yves Saint Laurent sort of took it and tidied up and sanitized it a bit in the year of 2003 when they released that one. But the original classic Azzaro Pour Homme, still really, really worth having in your fragrance collection. So we're getting close. There can't be too many decades left. We need to do the 1990s. So let's see what my two favourites are. Here's one that I don't actually have a proper bottle of. I'm going to go with Jean Paul Gaultier's Le Mal from 1994, I think. I've actually got a much more recent flanker, the Eau Fresh Popeye version. But the original Le Mal was groundbreaking stuff. For some reason, I just never get round to owning a bottle. I can't really explain why. I really ought to. It's not something I prefer massively to wear, but you may well do. It's a beautiful combination of lavender, mint, there's a kind of soapiness mixed with sweetness and vanilla, and a really, really unique and recognizable smell that I think is still just, you have to rate this. So many things have copied it or been influenced by it. It was really, really prevalent in the 90s and 2000s, still is today. And Jean Paul Gaultier's Le Mal, total classic, and the best, most successful release probably for men from that decade. The other one that I've gone for, which just about qualifies because it was the first year of that decade, 1990, Egoiste by Chanel. This to me is a real 10 out of 10 that I personally wear and love very, very much. Beautiful, spicy fragrance. It does have freshness, mandarin in the opening, lots of wonderful sandalwood. If you like the note of sandalwood, Egoiste is one of the best examples of that you can possibly get. Today's formula, still fantastic. There's cinnamon, there's a little ambretzi, there's a kind of sweetness about it, and beautiful woody sandalwood, spiciness, a little bit of a hint of the gourmand, but it's much more sophisticated than any gourmand fragrance. It's a real gentlemanly, niche quality, total classic from 1990, Egoiste from Chanel. I adore that fragrance. It's an 11 out of 10 fragrance for me. I think we may have one decade left. Did I miss something out? Now, the 80s, what did I give you for the 80s? Ah, yes, I was going to cheat. I wanted to just slip one more that I really love in from the 80s, and that's Green Irish Tweed from Creed, like the niche version of Cool Water. Fantastic. Lemon verbena, ambergris, and violet leaf is in there as well. Maybe a hint of peppermint. It's really superb stuff, Green Irish Tweed. And yeah, cheated there a little bit, didn't I? So let me know what you thought of my picks. I think I've covered them all. What are your favourite fragrances from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s and 2010s? What will be the new fragrance for the 2020s? Let's find out. Check them all out at Notino UK. Links are down there below. Thank you very much for watching. Remember, whatever you're doing in life, let's project. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Smelly.